Is it working? I think it's working. Hello, everybody. I'm so glad you're here. I'm trying this in landscape mode. So if this isn't, because I noticed on the YouTube channel, now it seems like really close to me. I don't know. I'll figure it out. But I was noticing on the YouTube channel that that up and down is kind of hard to read and interpret and see stuff on the recording. So I'm trying it landscape. You can tell me if it's working. If I'm showing up weird on your screen, you can let me know. So, today we are talking about forgiveness, what it is and what it isn't. Apparently, last week's scoping out touched a chord with you all, which is funny because I wasn't talking about forgiveness specifically last week, but there was something I said that garnered some attention, and so I wanted to clarify it today. Just introduce myself if you're new here. My name is Triffany, just like Tiffany with an R. I help high-powered women with all the trappings of success, add that happiness piece. I teach them the tools that help them achieve both happiness and success in their lives. I'm a certified professional life coach, and I started this Scoping Out series because I wanted to kind of give you a window into, thanks for the heart, I'm glad you're here. I wanted to kind of give you a window into the life of somebody who teaches these tools and helps people implement these ideas and these concepts into their life in a way that is authentic and pure, because even though I am teaching these things, I am not exempt from the lessons that they hold, right? I am still working through my stuff. I have my coach. This is important work for all of us to help us be our best in this world. So again, today we're talking about forgiveness. Is it giving in? Is it giving up? Or is it letting go? What is a life coach? That's a great question. So if you think of it this way, a doctor you go to when you're absolutely ill and you don't have another choice and you've got to address the illness piece of it. A personal trainer you go to when you want to optimize your health. So I'm like the personal trainer, right? So you would go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist when you were in the depths and you needed that mental health piece. And when you need the optimization, you come to me. So that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. And I do have 2 different certifications. If you are looking into life coaching, you need a good fit, let me know. I've got a great network. I'd love to be your life coach if it works out and it makes sense. But make sure you're asking the right questions to get a really good fit for yourself. So today, again, we're going to be talking about that forgiveness piece. Last week I said, and if this is your first time and you missed last week, you can catch this on my YouTube channel, YouTube.com/Triffany, Triffany, Hammond. Does it tie into spirituality? It can. It really, really can. Life coaching can easily tie into spirituality. Thank you for the questions. Really, it's about tapping into your own truth. So whatever that is for you, that can be spiritual. For some people, it's religious. For some people, it's neither of those. It's a connection of what they just feel to be their belief about values, right and wrong, morality, the way they want to show up in the world, the kind of person they want to be. So it absolutely can. And some life coaches, that's where they specialize in. So again, those questions are going to be really key when you're vetting a coach for you. Excellent questions this morning. Thank you so much. Isn't truth subjective though? Absolutely, it's subjective. So when I'm talking about truth, I'm talking about your specific truth, and I'm not talking about what we think from an ego place, from a mind place, or from a brain place, more from an expansive mind place. So we come to believe certain things about our life and about see, how do you know that your coach's life is not more messed up than yours? Because my coach is as transparent and as authentic as I am, and I know exactly what's going on in her life. It's a great question. Nobody's life is exempt from the messed up, right? Nobody's is. So when I'm talking about truth, I'm talking about getting past the cultural paradigm. I'm talking about getting past the default belief that we've come to know as as truth with a lowercase t simply because it's been passed on to us somehow, usually culturally through our institutions. I'm talking about something that taps into really the essence of who you are, because oftentimes your truth isn't what makes sense logically. You know, in the case of perhaps a job change, I've been here forever and I've invested all of this, you know, it would be stupid to change. And it doesn't make sense, doesn't make logical sense, right? But when you tap into what it is you feel called to do, when you tap into that place inside of you that needs something to be fulfilled, that speaks differently, we hear it differently, and acting on it is an act of courage, to be quite honest, because a lot of times it flies in the face of convention. And another question just popped up, so not spiritual truth. It is for some people. It doesn't have to be, and people use different language, so I want to be really, really careful about using those terms. And it might mean something different to you. When I think spiritual truth, I think my spiritual truth. I don't think a deified spirit, a God source, right? So it's different for each person, which relates to your earlier question. Isn't it subjective? Yes. And there's no wrong answer. That's the beautiful thing. Whatever it is that guides you to be your best and do your personal work is exactly what you're meant to tap into. So there's no judgment at all. And that actually is a great segue into this forgiveness piece, right? Because it's what makes it difficult for us to forgive is this little bit of judgment that we have about what has happened to us. So last week I revealed to you that I've been inspired to write an article called An Open Letter to the Cop Who Killed My Father. And in it, I said in passing, forgiveness is not saying it's okay. It's about taking back the energy that you've put into that situation and doing something good with it. And I just said it in passing. It's what I believe to be true about forgiveness. And it struck a chord with some people and really and made some of you think about what that means to you and your life. What I'm saying, isn't there an ultimate truth? How would we make our own? That's a beautiful question. We exist in a collective. And whether we're looking at this from a spiritual side or a scientific side, we are all interconnected. And we can prove this more and more as science. So what spirituality has been saying for millennia, we are just now coming to prove scientifically mirror neurons and sociological rapport and the ways that we react to the energy of the people around us is becoming more and more quantifiable and provable. We think we are individual. We think we are separate from one another, but really in truth, we are a piece of a collective. Which again is why this forgiveness piece is so important, because forgiveness can often, the lack of forgiveness can come from a place of fear. Lack of forgiveness can come from a place of grasping, yes? Where we feel like something's, if it's not fair, then why is it my job to be the bigger person? If it's not right, if what they did is not okay, why is the onus on me to make it so? These are really, really great questions, and they feed right into the topic. So on this forgiveness piece, let's take a look at this. Again, I'm just going to use my own personal life because it came up last week in this article, An Open Letter to the Cop Who Killed My Father. And there's a lot that a child has to come to terms with when they recognize that their father or parent or any loved one that they might know is a criminal of any kind, especially a violent one like my dad. And I really saw in sharp contrast what two different stories could do to a person. My mom, as a result of her hardships and the alcoholism in her family and the parents that she grew up with, she had addiction issues when I was very young. And then, of course, she married this guy who ends up being a criminal and in and out of jail. And, oh, that's okay. Thank you. There's no reason to apologize. It's really brought me to some really amazing work in my life and it helped me make some really conscious choices about who I am as a person. And I got to see in her, with her battles with addiction, I got to see when she was sober, she was the best mom ever. And she looked at life through a lens of optimism and beauty, and she loved people and the small moments and these little moments with me, and I felt treasured as a human being. When she wasn't sober, it was quite a different story. I was a dirge on her energy and her finances. I was a burden. Every man who'd ever been with her had betrayed her, and there was a hurtful story that came out when she'd been drinking or doing drugs, and there was a helpful story when she was sober. So I got to see the contrast. I got to, at a very young age, go, because they're both true, aren't they? Her hurtful story was true and her helpful story was true. So at an early age, as I'm feeling hurt by my own life experience, both from my mom, who's an incredible person, has come a long way, and she's a warrior in my life. I treasure her and value her to absolutely no end. But I got to see this firsthand. I got to see what this looked like to have the light and the dark inside of a person. And I got to see what kinds of life experiences brought out these stories. Are they hurtful or are they helpful? So at a very young age, I got to start looking at even my own stories and begin to say, okay, I can look at this life experience, which is hurtful. It's a hurtful life experience. I'm not even gonna lie. Like I cannot sugarcoat that, nor would I want to, because it would fly in the face of everything that I value in terms of truth and transparency. And there was this truth that I had this amazing bond with my mom, that I had this amazing respect with my mom when she was sober. So it lent itself to this piece of introspection. I began this process of self-reflection and realizing that at every single turn, I had a choice. Do I put my energy into the hurtful story, or do I put my energy into the helpful story? And in all honesty, this is, it sounds so simple, right? Like, oh, well, of course I'm going to put my energy into the helpful story. And you and I both know that is not always easy. When we've been triggered, when we are hurt, when we feel devalued, when we feel betrayed, any of those things, that's a visceral emotional response, and we do not have control over those emotions. So I don't want you to think for a second that this is about manhandling your thoughts or making sure that you show up a certain way from a very conscious thinking place. That is not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is coming to a gracious place within yourself where you can recognize that you have two truths, one that hurts you and one that helps you. That's it. Just recognize that they're both there, because we have this little thing. Hold on, there's a comment. Maybe put it in that which is good, not necessarily in what side of a person is good. Well, I like to think of it, rather than be polar opposites, I like to think of it as existing on a gradient, that they're all in us all of the time. So even when we're at our very, very happiest points, maybe we're out with a friend and we're having coffee and it's a beautiful day and we're really connecting, that doesn't take away the little pieces of us that are still, maybe upset about our job, or maybe we lost something recently that was valuable to us, and that is still in us. It's just overshadowed by the experience we're having at the moment. And the flip side is true too. When we feel like we're in the depths of our own darkness, there's still light in there too. There's still something in our life that is good as well, right? So I don't like to think of it as mutually exclusive. You are either one or the other. I like to think that they both exist in us at all times, and we get to choose where we put our energy, because energy creates what we want in our life, right? Thank you. I'm glad this is resonating for you. So if we get to choose, then how do we do that without policing our thoughts? How do we do that without this constant barrage of, am I thinking the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Well, the rules of creating great things in your life say this, but what I really feel is to do that, right? How do we do that? And the way we do that is we begin to look at where we're giving our energy. And this is how I view forgiveness. Well, what you're getting at is God. If we put our energy in Him, we'll always know we're looking to good. If you believe in a God and that is what He means to you, absolutely 1,000 times yes. And God means something different to everyone. Absolutely everyone. And if that's what He means, then that's exactly what you do. You look to God and you put your faith in that piece of the larger picture, that light, that goodness, right? Absolutely. I'm totally on board with that. And so if we get a chance to be able to identify where our story is, when we get that opportunity to look at whether something is depleting us or aiding us, we get the opportunity to choose. And again, this isn't about policing our thoughts. This isn't about staying on top of every little thing we think. We are allowed to feel what we feel. And the more we try to push that down and suppress it, the more we're going to feel it, right? If we're feeling resentment and we try to not feel resentful, we're going to actually end up feeling resentful toward ourselves because we're squashing the way that we actually feel. We're squashing our own authenticity. So it's really about showing up to where you are. And I look at forgiveness as being first. Where do we first put our energy? How would we ever, God is different for everyone, honey. I know maybe I need to do a whole scope on what God is, right? But God is very, very different for everyone. And I know for me personally, it's not the idea of a deity, the mythology, this being that it forges a hand, that actually doesn't resonate as truth with me. I'm going to be perfectly honest. Again, this is all about transparency. But if it resonates as a truth for you, then I absolutely support that for you. I happen to think of God as a collective. I happen to think of God as us, as we are all pieces of that, which is why we feel good when we contribute positively to that collective. So I like to think of forgiveness as, where do we first give our energy? Are we first giving it to a hurtful story, or are we first giving it to a helpful story, right? And if we're giving it to a hurtful story, then we're taking all of that energy that we could be creating something good. Look, if you don't like animal abuse, right? And it is not on your radar at all to forgive abusers, and you're out there railing against them, and you're mad as hell, and you're at rallies and stuff, and you're an instrument of change in that way. Will that affect change? Absolutely. But watch what's happening in you when that's your focus. Watch what's happening with you when you are concentrating on the heartbreak of animal abuse. You are feeling, most people would be feeling depleted, exhausted, angry at the world. What the hell is wrong with people? People today disgust me, right? Because we have a little thing called confirmation bias, that as soon as we have a belief about something, we begin to look for exclusively the proof that our belief is true. And we will actually ignore proof that our belief is not true. So even in a story, you've heard that Fred Rogers, that Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, you've heard him talk about, when I was young, my mom told me, when a disaster happens, look for the helpers, right? He was doing exactly this. He was being taught this same thing, that when we are given a story, we can rail against and be angry about the people who are abusing and doing the hurt. Absolutely, we can do that. And it's visceral. We feel what we feel. This is absolutely no judgment. Or we can look to the helpers. We can be a helper. And how do we feel when we begin to go, oh my gosh, for that one person that abused that animal, there were 15 people that came to that animal's rescue. There were 25,000 that shared the video. There were 100,000 that donated to the cause. There are how many shelters, right? We have a body of proof that supports this positivity. We have a body of proof that supports a positive light, that chooses a helpful story that gives us energy. Now we feel like we're a part of something good. Now we feel like it's worth it to do our work to keep our energy in ourselves, in our hearts, and centered, where we can do the best good that we can possibly do. Now we're sleeping at night. We're well rested. We're not angry, because everywhere we look, we see helpers. Yes, there are those injured souls that we don't understand. Yes, there are those people that do harm just for harm's sake. And we're not about to excuse their behavior. And this is that piece that we talked about last week, where forgiveness is not saying it's okay. We're not saying their bad behavior is okay. We're saying that we choose consciously to take that energy and put it into something that heals us, so that we can do our best work in this world. I hope that makes sense to you. A lot of these concepts are actually, I dive in really deep into them in the love section of the Fail to Win course, For All is Love. And I talk a lot about grace, compassion, forgiveness, and really clearing the slate, letting go of all that old baggage. So whatever it is you're building next, you can build from a place that isn't of resentment, isn't out to prove anything, is really coming from a place authentic and whole to who you are. I saw your hearts. Thank you. I'm glad this is feeling good to you. So I want to let you know that I just can't express enough that I don't want you to take what I've talked about today as a way to start to judge yourself or create, like I said earlier, a policing of your thoughts, right? I don't want this to be something where you begin to look at yourself through a lens because you haven't been able to forgive something. I want you to begin to just watch the story, and when you catch it, see how you feel. Does it feel good to think those thoughts? Is there an alternate truth that I could invest myself in? Is there something else that feeds a piece of me that feels better, that empowers me to be my best in this world? And just get curious with the process. Just begin to, in very small ways, nudge your way into this forgiveness piece. It's not something that happens overnight. I don't have a magic wand. I can't just imbue you with grace and forgiveness, right? And if you're here at all, if that resonated with you at all, if you were one of the people that contacted me about this last week, then you're already on your way. You already have a piece of that if it felt a little true for you last week. Another place that I talk about this forgiveness and grace is in the Conscious Transitions course. It is a home course in grief and growth. You can find all of these things on my website. So I want to thank you again for being here. I'm going to show you my little website, triffanyhammond.com. Yeah. Just remember there's an R in there. And tomorrow we've got the Inside Scope, which is where I answer your questions. So if you go to triffanyhammond.com/the Inside Scope, you can submit a question. I'll be happy to answer it. If you go to /Conscious Transitions, you can learn about that home course in grief and growth. FTW is fail to win, or for the win, as the internet likes to call it. And then if you're interested in the membership, you can go to /membership. So today, if you are a Conscious Transition student already, we have office hours today at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. Tomorrow is that Inside Scope at 9 a.m. Next week, I'll be doing this again at about 8-ish. And then the membership will have our group coaching call next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time as well. So there's the calendar. I hope to see you again next week. I'm so glad you're here, and thank you for the contributions. Thank you for the questions and the interaction. I hope that some of this hit home, and I hope you're able to forgive your energy a little bit and first give it to the parts of you that feel good so that you can be your best in the world today. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. If I can figure out how to turn this off.